All right, welcome back, baseball fans. Another elimination video. What we're looking at here is eliminating the Oakland A's. We're looking at last year first. Take a peek at the 71 to 74 Oakland team that didn't get to the World Series. They lost in the divisional round against the Orioles. And Kenny Holtzman had a great year, 8-1. Which is fantastic, as he struggled in the World Series year previous. Hunter was just ordinary at 7-7, but even more ordinary is Vida Blue, 7-8 with a 360 earned run average. That's what inspired the idea of a trade and a change, as Vida's 71 card would expire, and the A's didn't feel that he would produce that well in this scenario. Rightly so. He will continue a very long career into the early 80s. But they're want to cash in on this World Series window, so they traded him principally for Don Wilson and Al Downing. We'll get to that in a moment. But basically, nothing really was very good with his pitching staff. Pretty consistent, though. ERAs between 3 and 398 and 348, just two outliers. But when one of your outliers is Raleigh Fingers and Dave Hamilton, you have 3 losses right there, which could hurt the team trying to get to a World Series. He hit 272. Reggie had a fine year, 324, and 16 stolen bases, 11 homers, 36 RBI. Campaneris, Hegan, Rudy. You know, the batting average is good enough for an Oakland team that should have traveled to the World Series, but they fell short mostly because of pitching. So let's flash forward now to the World Series team you just saw, the 2024 Oakland A's. And this statistically was one of the greatest one of the greatest carryover league world champions we've had. I haven't actually gone through to rate them all in comparison to each other, but at 22 games over 500, that is quite a feat. 35-13, scored 253 runs, gave up 185. Mike Hegan, they benefited there by utilizing him beyond his capabilities. He had like 80 at-bats with that card. We got him 195. So that's where they optimized, while doing so while losing so many of the Oakland dynasty players to other franchises. That's an opportunity for them to capitalize for once. Look at the 2 outlier bench players against lefties. If you're going to get this kind of performance out of 180 hitters, chances are, you know, the baseball gods are looking fondly down at you. You know, Larry Brown and Pat Corrales, they had some big moments in the League Championship Series and World Series as well. And yeah, if you're going to let these guys get on base and get hits, then, you know, it's over. I mean, they were obviously, you know, they're scraping the bottom of the barrel finding guys like that on the free agency. Then you get to find that none of their regular starters hit 300 after that, which actually they're consistently at between 281 and 272. Don't get me wrong, and it's a 272 team average, but it's a slight bit of underperformance by Campaneris and Reggie and Rudy and Bando, but not as significant. And again, the pitching is really top notch in our league presently, so it's hard to bag on the A's for a dynasty team. For, you know, they got lucky up here with these 3 players. And these guys slightly underachieved, you could possibly say. But the most significant thing about the team, of course, is the pitchers, and particularly the 3 that stick out the most. Catfish Hunter, 14-1. I don't care what league you're in. You go 14-1, you're very special. You just don't wind up going 14-1. 277, 108. Kenny Holtzman, 10-3, 280, 120. And then Raleigh Fingers, incredibly untouchable. As was, we saw Rich Gossage, similarly untouchable. We got some incredible closers in our league this year. 17 saves in 25 innings with 0.71 earned run average. Locker and Hamilton, we saw in the World Series wrap, they really struggled, but overall for the year, this factors in the World Series, they were fantastic. And it really was the Vida Blue gamble that was going to determine this season. And frankly, well, this doesn't really look that good, does it? When you first think about it. Your number 3 and number 4 starters combined to go 5-8. on a team that's otherwise 22 games over 500. So, and at least Fido Blue was around 500. But the big get in the whole piece here was that Al Downing, Game 5 of the World Series, he threw 7 shutout innings. I mean, you could justify the trade simply on that. And with 7 shutout innings, it lowered his ERA to 5.91. So that's pretty remarkable. So again, this team, you know, let's face it, folks, when you are a champion in a sport, chances are you got lucky somewhere along the way. Teams, their opponents will call it luck. You know, the luckiest team wins, but, you know, the A's benefited by some performances and timeliness. And in an otherwise dead-even World Series that probably could have statistically gone the full 7 games versus the Reds, they actually ended it in 5. So with that, we'll take a look at the Oakland A's, the 12 players coming back, and you'll see that they're going to bring back 8 hitters and 4 pitchers. And there's every reason to be optimistic about a repeat. They've got all the essential offense coming back. Gene Tennis, catcher or first. Onaveras, nice DH this year. Nice little free agent they signed. Switch hitter, first, third, or DH. And there's Dick Green in his productive year of 73. Same with Bando, 73. Campaneris is a 74 card, his best year since 70. They're all coming back. Claudel Washington out in the left or center. Rusty Torres, you're basically just your defensive center fielder. He's a 2, whereas Claudel Washington's a 4. The combination of Washington and Torres hopefully can make up for not having Bill North available. And then, of course, 73, Reggie Jackson. He's only MVP. Technically, the 73 A's were probably the best of the 3-year dynasty, and that's what we're moving into, more of those cards. All right, so 4 pitchers. And when you look at the 4, how about this, folks? No starting pitchers. They're all in their contract years. And the A's are going to do everything they can to bring them all back if they can. So let's look at the bullpen, and this is why they were so good. Jim Todd, 75 card, not in the dynasty years, but an outstanding card with a 2.29 ERA. Bob Locker, you want it over there, it's outstanding. Righty gets lefties out. Dave Hamilton, the lefty who gets lefties out. And of course, Raleigh Fingers. So it's a perfect setup for a bullpen. You just need to bring back the horses that got you that World Series ring. This next season coming up will be the first legitimate attempt for a team to win back-to-back World Series. I've never had that in my carryover league. Never. Been doing it for over 20 years. Never had a repeat champion. We'll have to look at the 8 players from 1972 and see who we're going to keep, waive, and retire to see if they will have a great chance at repeating. All right, folks, here's the first of the 8 players that helped the A's get a World Series win. Here in a complimentary role is Larry Brown, a late draft, undrafted free agent, you can call him that, was released by Cleveland, and then the A's would pick him up. Longtime Cleveland player. He actually went to the A's in 71 and then 72, got that World Series ring. Is with Baltimore in 73 and with Texas with under 100 at-bats. We want to put him on waivers. He has to have a Strat card. Don't think he's going to have a Strat card with 35 plate appearances. We'll check. We'll look at Baltimore. And here, looking for Larry Brown. And look at their extra players. And the answer is no. They don't have a card made for Larry Brown. So that will end his career on a happy note. Actually at 295 with a 183 card, which is stunning. Yeah. And retires with a World Series ring. Next up, Pat Corrales. He was the partner to Larry Brown in this scenario. Did virtually the same stats. Got a World Series ring. Another 180 hitter who hit 295. 73 will be his last year. Pat was not even on Oakland or associated with them, but we traded it to him with this. So this is a card we use, the 72 San Diego card. Has a card with them in 73 if you want to get him on waivers. So we have to see if that exists in his final year. 73 San Diego. And we'll go to the Padres. And there it is. Back up to Fred Kendall, Pat Corrales. So he gets waivers. That's a great sign. We want our waiver wire to be full of players if we can. All right, next up, Mike Hegan. And this big year, you know, it's a shame, but I think they're going to have to, they're not going to have room for him. So they got everything they could out of this Hegan card. A 329 average in 72, and a limited number of at-bats with good defense. Milwaukee Brewer as well. And you see after Oakland, it's the Yankees and the Brewers. So here's the outlier performance of the 329 batting average. That's now expired. And now in 73, he hits 183 for the A's, then traded to the Yankees, it's 275. 74, Yankees and Brewers, 75-76. He sounds like another candidate for waivers. Does he have a card in 73 in this combination of Oakland, New York? So we'll look over at the roster sheets for Oakland, New York, looking for Mike Hegan. New York Yankees infielders. Mike Hegan has a Yankee card right there. So let's get him on waivers because we got better players coming up there that they're gonna. We talked about the starting pitching, so that's going to be the big influence here. So let's put Mike Hegan on waivers. And here's the first of the keepers, and it's going to be a staple of the dynasty, Joe Rudi. The only hitter to add to the hitters you saw from that other list. It basically means they could just replace Mike Hegan with Steve Olivares at first base, get a defensive replacement, and you're bringing back almost virtually the same offense with Joe Rudi in a slightly different card. So 72, Rudi had his best year in the dynasty, second on MVP votes. But 73 and 74 are comparable years. He's with the A's all the way through 76. Leads the league in doubles in 74 with 39 of them. Slugs 486 in 72. Does that in 74 and 75. He matches that. Oddly, 73 is a little bit of a down year, and he returns with better years in 74, 75. Again, Gold Glove, second MVP votes in 74. That'll probably be the card we take. But this is no-brainer territory here. Joe Rudi's the keeper. Now, the pitching. Oh boy. Just march down the list of the starting rotation of the Oakland A's. They're all free agents. This is the conundrum that Charlie Finley might have been under. It all pops up at once. How many catfishes are there? Just one. So, the 72 card. He's got a Cy Young coming up in 74. Yeah. This is what we're talking about, folks. You know, I mean, yeah, they overwhelmingly can go back-to-back. But still, it's a small league, small sample size league. Anything can happen when you're not playing 162 games. Kenny Holtzman, this isn't going to be critical. Does he actually maintain? And he was brilliant. And he'll play later in the decade with the Orioles and the Yankees. That suggests he'll maintain. There it is, 72, 107 whip. Oh yeah, next 3 years his whips are 114, 1.2, 1.2. Yep. Pitching on 3 days of rest every time. Moves to Baltimore in 76 and the Yankees. So, 251 ERA, 297 in 73, 307. Yeah, it's the steady progression. But Holtzman's coming back. And you see how quickly this adds up. You really get to too many important players, and then you realize you can't keep everybody. And now we're down to the next 2 critical ones. And you got a choice between Don Wilson and Al Downing. So here's the logic. They made the deal for Vida Blue to get a World Series in the Dynasty, and they achieved it. But as a byproduct of that trade, they're not going to be able to keep both these guys. So it's going to look like you got the World Series win, but the Ohio players got Vida Blue, who will pitch all the way through the 1980s. Oakland's only going to get Al Downing for about 3 or 4 more years, and Don Wilson for a couple of years, and only one of the two. Let's look at Don Wilson. So that's something that the American League can cheer for, that trade. Oakland wins a trade at the beginning, but then they lose the trade at the end. Here's Don Wilson. He tragically passes away in the offseason of '74. You see the sudden abruptness as his career ends at age 29 when it shouldn't have. So 2 more outstanding years and 116 and 131 whips. But we'll call him a keeper for now. But this is obviously meaning that you're not going to get rid of Joe Rudy or Catfish Hunter or Kenny Holtzman. And we'll look at Al Downing. Who would you rather have? You had to decide, and this is going to be the key thing that Oakland has to figure out. You have a choice between Al Downing and Don Wilson, and which guy do you want more? Lefties are always valued more. They have to pitch well. So Downing in '73, he doesn't pitch on 3 days rest anymore. So put that in the category for Don Wilson. He does, but Downing can pitch in the bullpen. And he often does in '75 and '76. Again, a lefty in the bullpen is very valuable. '72, he pitched on 3 days rest with a 129 whip. But '73, the whip is a little bit better. 115, 193 innings. That's a starting pitcher. He just doesn't pitch on 3 days rest, and as long as you have Hunter and Holtzman doing it, you don't really require Al Downing to do it. And then after that, when he goes to the bullpen, he's got a nice year in '75 as a reliever. Interesting. So he's got a quality year as a number 3, number 4 starter, and a quality year in the bullpen. So that's that versatility. Or do you want Don Wilson, who could pitch on 3 days rest? You only need 2 pitchers to pitch on 3 days rest on your roster, the way the schedule works out with the off days. So you don't really need 3 and 4 guys pitching on 3 days rest. So that is something that Oakland is going to have to figure out what they want to do, because they have the quality, but it's obviously these are going to be a trade. Somebody's getting traded. You can't put a quality on the waiver list, and it's quite obvious that those guys aren't waiver players. They're starters for our league. So they just have to find a team that is short on keepers. You could trade Don Wilson to the Houston Astros, where he played his career. You could trade Al Downing to the Dodgers, where he played his career. The problem with the Dodgers is that they had too many lefties. They had Claude Osteen, Tommy John, and Jim Brewer. So they had no room for lefty Al Downing. Don Wilson could go back to the Astros. What that would do is it would allow them to push J.R. Richard into the future a little bit. Push the guys who are in AAA in Houston, let them sit down there a little bit longer while Wilson pitches the next couple of years. Because J.R. Richard's not quite ready yet. He's still got a ERA around 4. Even Joe Niekro's with the Astros, and he's actually not better until the late 70s. So that's an option. But then the other option is expansion teams will always look for talent. So Don Wilson will be, of the two, you would be locking in all your lefties. Dave Hamilton, Catfish Hunter, and Al Downing. With Downing having the availability to be part of the rotation or part of the bullpen. You could even, check this out, because your bullpen is already locked up, you could go with a 73 Downing card in the rotation. Then next year, move him into the bullpen to replace Bob Locker. So that's a lot of flexibility with the Al Downing card. I think I'm more inclined to keep that one. I'm always more inclined, if I have a choice between a talented lefty and a talented righty, I'm more inclined to keep a lefty because of availability. So, I mean, it's the A's. They're going to be great. They're going to be a World Series contender. They're going to be an interesting case of trying to get a repeat in the carryover league, drafting at the very bottom, and oftentimes having to get guys off the street to complete your roster. And if it works out the way it did with Larry Brown and Pat Corrales and Rusty Torres, the way it did in this past year, then sure, yeah, they can win a World Series, but chances are the guys on the street who hit below 200 to finish your roster off aren't going to do that year in and year out. And can you expect Catfish Hunter and Kenny Holtzman to go 25-4 2 years in a row, which is what they just did? They got to do the same thing 2 years in a row with one of their other starting pitchers missing. So that's challenges, good challenges to have on the happiest eliminating video, eliminating a World Series winner. So when we look up top, we've now gotten the numbers down to 32 teams, and we're actually going to get another keeper in here. Yeah, we're up to 20. So this is the math that we would begin the off-season look for all teams. We're supposed to have 128 guys kept, 64 on waivers, 64 in retirement. This is what we have right now. You draw a line there, and then you can see this number 148, 47, and 61 represented here as well. Simple math suggests you take your 20 keepers, you send them into waivers. You take the 3 worst waivered players, you send them into retirement. That's the simple way of doing it. But this is what the fun part of the off season is, when all the teams have to comport to 4 keep, 2 on waivers, 2 on retirement. All right, that's it for eliminating the Oakland A's. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time.